Lady Justice, inviting all of the people out on an adventure. Let's go see what we can find. Who's in?
The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution is supposed to protect you from unreasonable searches and seizures. Normally, if the police want to search your home, they have to go to a judge, swear out an affidavit, and get a warrant. But if you're pulled over on the side of the highway, suddenly that warrant requirement just totally vanishes. Welcome back to Lady Justice Liberty Press. And in this explainer, we're venturing back over 100 years to uncover exactly how the government carved out a massive loophole in the Fourth Amendment. We're breaking down the landmark 1925 Supreme Court case, Carroll v. United States. Let's get into it.
Think about that stark contrast for a second. Your home is your castle, right? It's heavily shielded by the Constitution. To search it, law enforcement has to go through a rigorous, formal process to secure a signed warrant. But the literal second you pull out of your driveway and hit the highway, that rigid constitutional protection completely disappears. It's wild. How is it that the exact same Constitution applies to both scenarios, but yields such drastically different rules?
Well, to understand this massive legal discrepancy, we actually can't look at modern laws. We have to travel back over a century. The rules that dictate every single modern highway stop were forged in a 1925 Supreme Court case called Carroll v. United States. This one single ruling is the keystone for virtually every vehicle search happening in the country today. But, legal cases don't just happen in a vacuum. They're born from the chaos of their era. So to really grasp why the Supreme Court made this call, we have to look at exactly what was going down in America at the time. All right, let's set the scene. We're in the Roaring '20s. The Volstead Act is in full effect, and Prohibition has completely banned the sale, production, and transport of alcohol nationwide. And because of this sweeping federal mandate, an incredibly lucrative black market just exploded overnight. Geographically speaking, Detroit, Michigan became the epicenter. Sitting right across the river from Canada, where, by the way, alcohol was still perfectly legal, Detroit became one of the busiest, most chaotic smuggling hubs in the entire country. The government was absolutely desperate to crack down on this massive river of illegal liquor pouring over the border and onto American highways. Enter our main characters, George Carroll and John Kiro. Now, the feds strongly suspected these two were bootleggers. And honestly, it wasn't just a random hunch. A few months prior, federal Prohibition agents had actually gone undercover trying to execute a sting operation to buy illegal liquor directly from Carroll. The deal ended up falling through, but it gave the agents something absolutely crucial. They successfully memorized Carroll's face and the exact vehicle he was driving, so the feds knew exactly who they were looking for. Fast forward to December 1921. Those exact same federal agents are out patrolling the highway between Detroit and Grand Rapids. Suddenly, they spot Carroll and Kiro driving by in that very same highly recognizable car. The agents immediately spin their vehicle around, slam on the gas, and a high-stakes highway chase ensues. Minutes later, they force the suspected bootleggers to the side of the road. And, acting purely on their previous undercover encounter, the agents just immediately begin ripping the car apart. Now, I want you to focus on the number 68. Because remember, these federal agents do not have a warrant. They haven't spoken to a judge. They haven't sworn out an affidavit. But they order Carroll and Kiro out of the vehicle and just tear into it anyway. I mean, they brutally rip open the rumble seat and literally cut open the car's upholstery. And hidden deep inside those meticulously modified seats, they find exactly what they were looking for. 68 bottles of smuggled whiskey and gin. Carroll and Kiro were immediately arrested right there on the side of the road. But obviously the story doesn't end on the side of a Michigan highway. Carroll's defense attorneys hit back, and they hit back hard. They took this fight all the way up to the highest court in the land, arguing to the Supreme Court that this search was a blatant, undeniable violation of the Fourth Amendment. Their argument was pretty straightforward, honestly. How on earth can government agents just pull citizens over and literally rip their private property to shreds without a warrant? I mean, if they can do it to Carroll, they can do it to anyone, right? The justices were suddenly faced with this major constitutional dilemma, pitting our civil liberties against the practical realities of enforcing the law. So how did the court resolve this crazy tension? Well, on March 2nd, 1925, the Supreme Court handed down a 6-2 decision in favor of the government. This was a massive, decisive victory for law enforcement that forever changed how police interact with the public. The court validated the actions of those Prohibition agents, officially deciding that, under these specific circumstances, a warrant was not actually required to search the vehicle. But to understand the full weight of this ruling, we really need to dig into the legal reasoning behind it. Chief Justice William Howard Taft wrote the majority opinion for the court. And in doing so, he officially created what is known today as the automobile exception, or as it's often called in legal circles, the Carroll Doctrine.
Taft recognized that the invention of the automobile had fundamentally changed the entire landscape of American crime and law enforcement. The old rules, the ones written for an era of horse-drawn carriages and foot patrols, they desperately needed an update to deal with the sheer speed and efficiency of modern motorized smuggling. Taft's main argument came down to the fundamental difference between a stationary building and a highly mobile vehicle. Think about it. With a stationary building, like a house, the suspect and the evidence usually stay put, right? So it's entirely practical to go get a warrant. But a vehicle? Taft reasoned that if police officers had to leave the highway, travel to a courthouse, track down a judge, and wait for a warrant to be signed, the suspect would literally just drive away. The evidence would easily disappear across state lines. Because of this inherent mobility, requiring a warrant is just practically impossible. Now, if you're sitting there thinking this sounds like the police were just handed a blank check to do whatever they want on the highway, hold on a second. This is where we pivot to your rights today, because Chief Justice Taft explicitly stated that the Fourth Amendment still absolutely prohibits unreasonable searches. The ruling does not allow law enforcement to just stop highway travelers on a whim or pull over anyone they don't like the look of just to tear their car apart. There is a very specific, incredibly high bar that must still be cleared. And that high bar, that is probable cause. To bypass the warrant requirement under the Carroll doctrine, the officer absolutely must have probable cause to believe that the vehicle contains contraband or evidence of a crime. We're talking about a standard of reasonable belief based on articulable facts. In George Carroll's case, the Supreme Court stated that the federal agents had clear probable cause because of their prior undercover sting operation. They knew who he was, and they knew his track record. They weren't just guessing out there. They had a reasonable, evidence-based belief that he was transporting illegal goods right in that exact moment. Bridging this 1925 ruling directly to modern-day traffic stops, it is incredibly important to understand what probable cause is not. A mere hunch or a gut feeling? Not probable cause. A citizen politely refusing to answer an officer's questions? Definitely not probable cause. And simply standing up for your constitutional rights certainly does not constitute probable cause to search a vehicle. The standard is exactly what is being tested today when citizens interact with law enforcement on the side of the road. The Carroll doctrine removed the warrant, sure, but it firmly left the requirement for probable cause in its place. The Carroll decision was forged over a century ago during the war on alcohol, yet it still dictates the boundaries of every single traffic stop on American roads today. Understanding the historical foundation of this law empowers you to understand your rights in the present. So the next time you think about the delicate balance between government authority and individual liberty during a roadside stop, remember George Carroll, those 68 bottles of gin, and leave yourself with this one provocative question. When the warrant requirement vanishes, what is your probable cause? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Have you heard the word? thepolicerecord.com/invite/LJLP. Get you some discountage over there at thepolicerecord.com. Hope to see you there.